It should be coming up recording now. And I'm going to start today's lesson by sharing a screen. We're going to look at scale degrees. I just want to share the screen with you properly. Can you just tell me if you can see the screen?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. So the reason we're learning the degrees of the scale and their names is because as we go through the semester, we are going to be learning about how to harmonize chords. We'll learn about, if you don't know what a chord is, that's fine, because we're going to be learning about those in the next few weeks. But it's very important to know what the name of each note of the scale is, so that you know how to build chords on those notes. So that's why we're learning what we're doing today. Now, if we look at each note of the scale, each successive note is called a degree of the scale. If you look at your screen now, you'll see the scale of F major in the treble clef. If you look on the far left where the key signature is, you'll see there is one flat. And if you had your key table with you, you'd see that one flat is F major. So the first note, F, is called the first degree of the scale. The second note, G, is the second degree, A is the third, B flat the fourth, C the fifth, D the sixth, E the seventh, and then the last note, F, is the same letter name as the first. So we've just called it the octave. But technically, it's basically the same as the first degree of the scale, okay? So just keep that in mind, the first and the last note, because they're the same, the letter name, their degree name is also the same. Here is something very important, and we've spoken about this briefly before when we were working with minor scales. When a scale descends, the degrees work in reverse. Okay, so it's a bit like when you are working with intervals, you always start from the lowest note. The same is true of scales and the degrees of scales. So if you look at that picture now on your screen, you'll see that the last note is the first degree, the second last note is the second degree, and so on. Okay, it's very, very important to remember this, otherwise things can get quite confusing. All right, now each of the degrees of the scale, besides being called first or second or third, has a special name. The first degree is called the tonic. Now, some of you will have heard of the notation system called tonic solfa. Have any of you heard of that, tonic solfa? You may have seen it, maybe you don't know that you've even seen it, but it's where you use do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. And that, when you're using that instead of staff notation, that is called tonic solfa. Okay, it's called tonic solfa because it's based on the major scale, and the first note of the, or the first degree of the major scale is called the tonic. Okay, so F major, the tonic note is F, the first degree. Now, the important thing here is these technical names, you just have to know by heart, okay? So while we are going through them now, start to make sure that you become familiar with them so that you know them by heart. First degree, tonic. Now, if we go a perfect fifth above the tonic and a perfect fifth below the tonic, we get two very important things called the dominant and the subdominant. So if we start on F and we count 5, F, G, B, C, a fifth above F is a C. That C we call the dominant. Dominant mean. Who can tell me what dominant means? Nobody know what dominant means? Okay, I hope that you're all listening, but anyway, here we go. Dominant means something that's important or is powerful over something else. So if your culture is the dominant culture, it means that your culture is over and above or has more power than another culture. Okay, but dominant can be used in a number of different ways. Now, in a scale, the word dominant refers to one of the notes in the scale that is important, and it has importance over some of the other notes. The tonic obviously is the most important note in a major scale because that's like the home note. Okay, it's the note that you're always going to start on and end on. But the dominant note is also important, and it's dominant because when we start using chords, the dominant chord is one of the chords that defines a key. We'll learn more about keys as we go along, but just so that you know, the fifth note of the scale, the dominant, is very important. If we go backwards from F, 5 down, so a perfect fifth below, we get F, E, D, C, B, B flat, okay? That note is called the subdominant. Sub means underneath, you know, like the word submarine, okay? So it is the underneath dominant, if you want to put it another way. So you've got the dominant above, 5 notes above, and you've got the subdominant, the underneath dominant, 5 notes below. It's also an important note because the chord that's built on the subdominant has very important qualities for chords when we learn those chords. Okay, so far we've got the tonic, which is the first degree. We've got the dominant, which is the 5th degree, and we've got the subdominant, which is the 4th degree. All right. Then a third above the tonic and a third below the tonic are called the mediant and the submediant. Now, the word mediant, it just means in the middle. So if you look at your screen now, if you look where my pointer is, there's the tonic, and there is the dominant, okay, which we learned about just now. The mediant is in between the tonic and the dominant. It's in the middle of it. That's why it's called the mediant. Okay. So this one is called the mediant. Here we've got the tonic and we've got the subdominant. Exactly halfway between, we've got something called the submediant. It's the sub because it's underneath, right? We've got the subdominant and the submediant. We've got the mediant and the dominant. Okay, so everything is named in relation to the tonic. Let's revise all of them that we've got so far. We've got the tonic, which is the home or the first degree. We've got the dominant, which is 5 notes above, the subdominant, which is 5 notes below, the mediant, 3 notes above, and the submediant, 3 notes below. Now let's look at the notes that are immediately next to the tonic on either side. Okay, the one just above the tonic. So if we're working in F major, there's F, which is the tonic. The one just above that, G, we call the supertonic. Super in this word, in this case, means above, just above. Super means above. So the supertonic, the one note above the tonic here is G. And the note just underneath it, so there's the tonic, the note just underneath it is called the leading note. Okay. Now we call it the leading note because if you play a major scale or sing a major scale up to the seventh note, so the seventh degree is called the leading note because it's just below the last note of the scale. If you sing or play that, you'll notice that if you don't play the eighth note, it feels very strongly as though the scale is incomplete. So I'll sing it for you. Here's the major scale. La, 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 la. If I stop on that note, on note number 7, it feels like I still need to go somewhere, right? Listen to it again. La, 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 la. It wants to go la. So the 7th note is always leading to the tonic. That's why we call it the leading note. So let's put these all in a row so that you can see them one by one. There's the tonic. 5 notes above the tonic is the dominant. Okay. 5 notes below the tonic is the subdominant. But if we put it in a row like this, you'll see that, sorry, I've lost my marker. You'll see that the subdominant is the 4th note of the scale. A 3rd above the tonic is called the mediant. A 3rd below the tonic is called the submediant. But you see that I've just put it up in a row now. Okay. 1 note above the tonic is called the supertonic, and 1 note below the tonic is called the leading note. Okay. And this note here, remember the octave, would just revert to tonic again. Look at it here. Tonic, dominant, mediant. Here's the tonic again. Tonic, subdominant, submediant. So if we're looking from the tonic in this direction, subdominant, submediant, and the leading note. Okay. That is how the scale degrees work. It's very simple actually, but it's just getting used to those interesting names. Okay. So in order they are tonic, supertonic, mediant, subdominant, dominant, submediant, leading note, and then we go back to the tonic. These things you just need to learn by heart, okay? It's one of those things that you need to sit with until you can recite it off by heart, okay? So make sure that you're doing that on a regular basis. Are there any questions that you want to ask before we go on to the next little section?
No, sir.
Thank you. All right. Now we're going to look at another screen. We're going to go on to a different section. A different section, which is about finding the key of a piece. Right, we've learned about key signatures, and we've learned about scales. But now we need to see how these things operate in real life. So occasionally you're going to be asked to identify the key of a piece. And there are a number of ways that we can work that out. Okay, now, hopefully you have learned how to write the circle of fifths or you have learned that new key table that I showed you a couple of weeks ago, where you write out the number of sharps and the number of flats, and you can work them out according to the numbers. So if you look at the key signature at the beginning of a piece, you can usually begin to work out what the key of the piece is. But sometimes we'll be working with major keys and sometimes with minor keys. And you'll know that the key signature that you can put at the front of a piece can have a major key as one option or a minor key as another option. So if you consider C major has no sharps or flats, but A minor also has no sharps or flats in its key signature. So if you had a key signature with no sharps or flats, it would mean either that the key is C major or A minor. And I'm going to show you in this video how we can work out the difference between the major and the minor keys. Okay. So the first thing that we do when we are looking for the key of the piece is the key signature. Then we check if there are any accidentals. Who can remember what an accidental is?
It's a note that doesn't fit into the key signature of the piece.
Yes, so it's like an extra sharp or an extra flat. Thank you, Akilan. Now, if there are no accidentals in the piece, then we're probably dealing with the major key. Okay, and we can make sure about that by looking at the first and the last note of the piece. If the first note and the last note are the tonic or the dominant of that particular key, then we are definitely in the major. But if there are accidentals, you need to check what the 7th degree of the minor scale would normally be. Now you remember that when you're writing harmonic minor scales, the 7th note is always raised, isn't it? Okay, and that note isn't in the key signature, so it receives an accidental. So we can always check if an accidental is related to the 7th degree of a minor key. So that might sound very complex to you at the moment, but I'm going to show you how it works. Let's have a look at this little piece over here. So our first option is to look at the key signature, right? There are 4 sharps. So our first step is to check on our little key signature table which keys have 4 sharps. If we have a look, there's 4 sharps for the major. E major has 4 sharps, and C sharp minor also has 4 sharps. So we know the major key with 4 sharps is E major, and the minor key with 4 sharps is C sharp minor. Okay, so already we've narrowed this down. This could either be E major or it could be C sharp minor. The third step is to check if there are any accidentals. And you see that there are no accidentals here, no added sharps or flats. The fourth step is to check the first and the last note. The first note is an E, and the last note is also an E. So that is telling us very strongly that the key signature and all of the evidence is pointing towards E major rather than C sharp minor. Okay, remember there were 2 options with 4 sharps, E major or C sharp minor. But all the evidence, no accidentals, and the first note and the last note are E, are pointing towards this being E major. Let's have a look at this example now. If we look at the beginning, we'll see that there is a key signature with 2 flats, and there is an accidental. See, there is an accidental F sharp. All right, so let's go through the steps. The step one is to check the sharps or flats in the key signature. We've got 2 flats. So the major key with 2 flats is B flat, and the minor key with 2 flats is G minor. Okay, so the 2 possible keys that we are working with are B flat major or G minor. Step 3, check if there are any accidentals. And yes, there are accidentals. We've got an F sharp. Okay. Now, if we wrote out the G minor scale, here it is. If you look at your screen, I've written out the G minor scale. G, A, B flat, C, D, E flat. F sharp is the 7th note which is raised, and G. There is the B flat from the key signature. There is the E flat from the key signature. But as always in a harmonic minor scale, we raise note number 7. And note number 7 is an F sharp. Now we've got F sharps in the key signature. Not in the key signature, in the piece as accidentals. So this is pushing us towards thinking this might be G minor. Okay. If we check the first and the last notes, there's the first note is a G, and the last note is also a G. So we are definitely working in G minor. Let's go back a step again, just to go through each of these steps. Step 1, we check the number of flats. There are 2 flats. The major key with 2 flats is B flat major. The minor key with 2 flats is G minor. Okay. So this piece could either be in B flat major or G minor. Then we check if there are accidentals. If there were no accidentals, it probably would have been B flat major. But this does have accidentals, an F sharp. Okay. There are no F sharps in B flat major, but there is an F sharp in G minor, and that is the 7th note of the G minor scale. Our 4th step is to check the first and the last notes. The first note is a G, and the last note is a G. So we are definitely working with G minor. All right, now let's look at another example. Here, we're going to go through each of the steps again. Step 1, we check the number of sharps or flats in the key signature. There is 1 sharp. Step 2, we go to the key signature table. The major key with 1 sharp is G major. The minor key with 1 sharp is E minor. So our options are G major or E minor. Step 3, are there any accidentals? Yes, there is an accidental, D sharp. Is there a D sharp in G major? No, there is no D sharp. Is there a D sharp in E minor? Well, let's have a look. Here is the E minor scale. E, F sharp from the key signature, G, A, B, C, and the 7th note is a D, which we need to raise up to D sharp. So E minor does have a D sharp. And if we check the first note and the last note, the first note is an E and the last note is a B, which is the dominant note of E minor. Remember, if a note is dominant, it means it's important. So we are certainly working with E minor. Now, what happens if a piece of music that doesn't have a key signature, but only has accidentals is given to you and you have to work out the key from there? Okay, this is a very complex thing and you won't get this in our course this semester. but you might start getting it from next year. So don't panic if you think this is difficult. I'm just showing you how to do it. It's not too difficult to work out if you go through each of these steps. The first step is to list all of the accidentals and see if you can put them in the regular order of sharps or flats. So what is the order of the flats? What is that rhyme that we always use for the order of the flats? Who can tell me what it is? Starts with the word father.
Father Charles goes down and ends battle.
Yes, correct. Okay. And then you just go in reverse for the order of the flats. Okay. So let's list all of the sharps that we see in this piece of music. The first sharp that we see is D sharp. The second sharp that we see is F sharp. There's another F sharp. There's another D sharp, and a C sharp. So we make a list. D sharp, F sharp, C sharp. Now we try and fit those into the order of the sharps. So the order of the sharps is F, Father Charles goes down and ends battle. So we put them in order. F for Father, C for Charles. We're missing the G sharp, okay? Father Charles goes, but we do have a D sharp, all right? So we're definitely working with something that should have 4 sharps. If we look at this piece of music over here, is there a G anywhere? Can you see a G anywhere in this piece? No, there's no G. Okay, so there could be a G sharp in this piece, but so far in the piece of music, we haven't seen it. Okay, now we list all the notes that do not have accidentals. Okay, let's go through this piece again. Let me just get my, so this is a D sharp. All of those notes are going to be D sharp. Okay, the E doesn't have an accidental. The F sharp here has accidentals. The F sharp has accidentals. The E we've already got, we've listed that. That's got an accidental, that's got an accidental, that's got an accidental, but this one doesn't. So the notes that don't have accidentals are E and B. Now we're going to eliminate all the possible keys which cannot be used, given that we know what we've got, okay? So there are no flats in this example. We're not dealing with any flat keys. So immediately that cuts out all of those keys, okay? No flats. We have no C flat, G flat, D flat, A flat, E flat, or B flat. So it can't be F major, B flat major, E flat major, A flat major, D flat, G flat, C flat major. And it can't be D minor, G minor, C minor, F minor, because there are no flats, okay? So we're only dealing with keys that have sharps in them, okay? So already we've knocked out a whole lot of possibilities, which is fantastic. Now this example has at least 4 sharps, okay? Remember we looked, when we go back here, we've seen that it's got F, C, and D sharp, and there's no G in this piece, but we think that there must be a G here to make the pattern work. So it got at least 4 sharps. So that rules out 1, 2, and 3 sharps, and 1, 2, and 3 sharps for the minor keys. So we either working with E major, B major, F sharp, or C sharp major, okay? But it also has an E natural and a B natural. F sharp major doesn't have a B natural, and C sharp major doesn't have a B natural. So that limits us to 2 possible keys, E major or B major. Now we check the last note. The last note is a B. So the most likely key for this piece of music is B major. Now, this example 4 that I've just been going through is a difficult one, okay? This is not the kind of thing that you're going to be getting for your assessments this semester. But you can see that if you follow these steps slowly and carefully, you can work out what the key of something is, even if there's no key signature. Now, are there any questions that you would like to ask?
Nothing from my side, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to ask questions? Seems like you're all okay. All right, now there's just one last thing that I want to go through today. And it is quite important because you'll find that in your oral exercises from now on, you're going to be doing or singing modes. And we've learned about major and minor scales, but now we're going to start learning about something called modes. I've spoken briefly about modes before, and you may remember this when we were looking at the relationship between major and minor scales. But I want to revise that now and introduce you to each of the minor keys, the modes. Just finding it here for you because I want to show it to you as we go through it. All right. Now I'm going to show you the textbook now so that you can see what we're talking about. So let me just share the screen. Just tell me when you can see the screen. Okay. So you'll remember that we discovered that there are 8 modes, or actually 7 modes, okay? And they've got these interesting names: Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and Locrian. And we've already learned that the Ionian mode is the major scale, and the Aeolian mode is the natural minor scale. So we've already learned 2 of the modes. Okay. The names come from Greek, okay, because the ancient Greeks used scales, and they called them by they gave them these names. And we don't actually know exactly what those scales sounded like because it was such a long time ago, but we do know from their writings what they were called. And so modern theorists have given these Greek names to our modes. So as I've said, the Ionian mode is the same as the major scale. So if we take D major scale as an example, and you'll see that I've written it out here, D major scale has got 2 sharps, F and C. And here it is, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. That's the D major scale. So if you look at this table here, there is the Ionian mode. Now, all of the modes are going to use these same notes: D natural, E natural, F sharp, G natural, A natural, B natural, C sharp. But they start on different notes. So the Dorian scale starts on E, it has F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D, E. The Phrygian starts on the F sharp, and it goes successively: F sharp, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp. The Lydian starts on G, and it uses those same notes, but in order. The Mixolydian starts on A, the Aeolian on B, and the Locrian on C sharp. So the important thing here is that you notice that they're all using the same set of notes. This D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, D. They all go in succession from one note to the next. Okay, like this one. E goes to F sharp, to G, to A, to B. This one starts on F sharp, but it goes to the next one, which is G, A, and so forth. They're just using the same pool of notes. Okay. The important thing is, there's several important things here. All of these modes, the Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and Locrian, all have the same key signature for this pool of notes. So if we're working with the Ionian mode on D, it will have the key signature F sharp and C sharp. But if we're working with the Phrygian mode on F sharp, it also has that same key signature F sharp and C sharp. Basically, what it's telling us is that all of these modes are family. They all have the same DNA, but they just look slightly different and sound slightly different. Now, I've spoken to you about this before. When you think about your family, when you look at your whole family, if you took a photograph of every member of your family together, you would probably see immediately that you are family because you've all got characteristics that are the same. You might have the same looking nose or the same looking ears or the same looking mouth, but each of you is individual as well. You share the same DNA, but there are slight differences in the way that you look. And that is the same case with the modes. Here, they're all sharing the same DNA, which are the notes D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, and C sharp. But the notes are just ordered differently depending on which mode you are using. So when we are naming the modes, we are always naming them with the starting note first, and then the Greek name. So in this case, if we were using the Phrygian mode, we'd say F sharp Phrygian, because the first note is F sharp. Okay. Here is the F sharp Phrygian with the key signature. Okay, the key signature still has the F sharp and the C sharp, but it starts on F sharp and it goes like that. Okay, or we can write it without the key signature, where we put the F sharp and the C sharps in manually, just like what we did with major and minor keys. Okay, now I've spoken to you about how they are related to each other. We can also number, because they're related to each other, we can number them as well. Okay, so if we were to take them as degrees, the Ionian is the first, Dorian is second, Phrygian is third, Lydian is the fourth, Mixolydian is the fifth, Aeolian is the sixth, and Locrian is the seventh mode. So this is the first mode, second mode, third mode, fourth mode, fifth mode, sixth mode, seventh mode. And they're named according to the degree of the scale. So the Ionian is counted as the first degree, Dorian is second, Phrygian is third, Lydian is fourth, Mixolydian as fifth, Aeolian sixth, and Locrian seventh. Okay. Now, we need to sometimes work out the relative major or the relative minor of a mode. And if you're going to do jazz, this is going to be particularly important. So what is the relative major of D Lydian? Okay, let's have a look. Lydian mode is the fourth degree. If we go up to this table over here, Lydian is the fourth degree, okay? And this tells us that the starting note of this Lydian is D. So D must be the fourth note. So if we have D as the fourth note, the third note must be C, the second note must be B, and the first note must be A, just by working backwards. So we know that Lydian is the fourth note. If the fourth note is D, the third note must be C, the second note must be B, and the first note must be A. Okay, You see that? We have to count backwards from D. Now, is there a D natural in A major? So we consult the circle of fifths. If you look at the circle of fifths or your key table, you'll see that A major has got 3 sharps. And the 3 sharps are F, C, and G. So there's no D sharp in A major. So yes, the result is A major. The relative major of D Lydian is A major. So that's how these how modes work. Okay, the modes have a lovely sound. Each of them has a very unique sound, and from now on, every week we are going to be practicing one mode per week. Okay, with your oral exercises. So I'm going to show you your oral exercises in a minute. Let me just stop sharing that, and I'm going to share the oral exercises so you can see. Here are your oral exercises. We're now on week 6. So today I'm going to teach you how to sing the Dorian mode. You're going to have a clapping exercise and the Dorian mode. So what I'm going to do for you is sing the Dorian mode so that you can hear what it sounds like. Okay? Here it starts. La 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 la. Sounds very much like a minor key, but without the raised 7th. Listen to it again. La 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 la. Now I'm going to record that as a voice note, which I'll send on the group. It is your task to try and imitate that exactly. Okay, I want to hear you be able to sing the Dorian mode going up and down completely accurately. All right, so that's what your oral exercise is going to be this week. Let's have a look at your worksheet for this week so that you can see what we're dealing with. And this week's worksheet is number 5. So let me just share that for you now. All right, so here is worksheet 5. And you'll see that what I've done is I've put that little table there for you to be able to refer to. This week, we're going to be looking at minor key signatures. So your first question, for example, is G minor. On this table, you go to the minors, you look for G minor, there it is, and you'll see that it's got 2 flats. So you put the G minor key signature, and that's how you work out all of those. Okay, so those are your key signatures. Then we're going to be writing melodic minor scales. Do you remember that? And here is a little, just a reminder that when you're going up a melodic scale, it's the 6th and 7th notes that are raised. And then on the way down, the 7th and the 6th notes are flattened. Okay. Actually, you know what? We've done this worksheet already. I'm going through the wrong one. It's 6 that we need to do. My apologies. 6, worksheet 6. And we're revising, what are these things called? Intervals. Okay, you know how to work out intervals. So there they are. We've got key signatures, minor and major key signatures, and we're writing out scales. F harmonic minor, E flat major, C sharp and melodic minor, ascending and descending. That's with the 6th and the 7th. And then these ones you're writing with the key signature. A minor melodic, D harmonic, B major ascending. You're going to label each of these notes according to the scale degrees. Remember what we learned earlier today? The scale degrees. Remember the first one is tonic, supertonic, and so on. Okay, you'll need to go and refer to that video just to make sure that you understand that. You're going to identify the keys of these passages by looking at the key signatures, just like we did in our examples. Okay, there are 5 examples there. Sorry, I think there are only 4. 4 examples for you to find the key signatures. So you just go through each of the steps as we've said. And then you're going to write out 3 modes, okay? The E Dorian mode, the F sharp Mixo-Lydian mode, and the A flat Lydian mode. There's a lot for you to do this week, okay? So if you have questions now, you are welcome to ask them and I'll see if I can answer them. Otherwise, my recommendation is that you start working on that worksheet and then hand it in to me next Monday. So are there any questions?